In 1971, a 17-year-old girl named Juliane Koepcke lived in Peru, a country in South America. She was born in Lima, the capital city, to German parents who were both scientists. Her father, Hans Wilhelm Koepcke, was a biologist, and her mother, Maria Koepcke, studied birds. The family often stayed in the Amazon rainforest, where they researched animals and plants. Juliane grew up surrounded by nature. She learned how to recognize different animals, how to find clean water, and how to stay calm in the wild. Those lessons would later save her life. It was Christmas Eve, December 24th, 1971. Juliane and her mother were in Lima, planning to visit her father at a research station deep in the jungle called Panguana. They needed to fly to the city of Pucallpa to meet him. They booked seats on Lanza Flight 508, a small Peruvian airplane. Juliane was excited about seeing her father, but her mother felt uneasy. She knew the airline had a bad safety record. Still, it was the only available flight, so they decided to take it. At first, everything seemed normal. The plane took off smoothly, and the passengers relaxed as Christmas music played. Juliane sat next to her mother by the window, watching the green landscape below. But after about half an hour, things began to change. The sky darkened, and the plane flew into a massive thunderstorm. Rain lashed against the windows, lightning flashed, and the plane began to shake. The turbulence grew stronger. Luggage fell from overhead compartments, and passengers began to scream and pray. Juliane remembered her mother holding her hand tightly and saying, "Now it's all over." Moments later, lightning struck the plane. There was a loud explosion. The aircraft began to break apart in the air. Juliane suddenly found herself spinning in her seat. The cabin around her disappeared. She was falling, thousands of meters above the ground, still strapped to her seat. The noise of the wind was deafening. Then everything went black. When Juliane woke up, she was lying on the jungle floor. The crash had thrown her out of the plane, but somehow she had survived. She was still in her seat belt, lying under her seat frame. Her right arm was injured, her collarbone was broken, and she had a deep cut on her leg. One of her eyes was swollen shut. She was dizzy and in pain, and her glasses were gone. Above her, the thick green canopy of the Amazon forest blocked the sky. She called out for her mother, but there was no reply. She was completely alone. Juliane later said she couldn't remember the fall. Scientists believe that her seat acted like a parachute, spinning slowly as it fell. The thick trees and soft jungle floor probably helped cushion the impact. Still, surviving a fall from about 3,000 meters, nearly 10,000 feet, was almost a miracle. At first, Juliane stayed where she was, trying to understand what had happened. She felt weak and could hardly move. Around her were pieces of the broken airplane, luggage, and the bodies of other passengers. She realized that she was the only one alive nearby. She found a small bag of sweets, which would become her only food for many days. Juliane remembered what her father had taught her. If you ever get lost in the jungle, follow a stream. It will lead you to a river, and rivers lead to people. Those words gave her hope. She decided to look for water. Moving was painful, but she began to walk. The jungle was hot, humid, and full of insects. She could hear birds, frogs, and monkeys, but she saw no people. The dense vegetation made every step difficult. During the first few days, Juliane tried to find other survivors. She came across parts of the airplane, empty seats, and luggage scattered across the forest. She even found a row of seats with bodies still strapped in, upside down. It was a terrible sight, but she forced herself to keep walking. She still hoped to find her mother alive. Juliane followed a small stream and kept moving downstream. She drank water from it, though it was dirty. She had no food except the candies she found, so she ate them slowly, one by one. Her wounds were getting worse, and insects bit her constantly. At night, she slept on the ground or under trees, trying to stay dry. The noise of the jungle never stopped, the buzzing of insects, the croaks of frogs, and the howls of distant animals. Still, she stayed calm. She had spent time in the rainforest before and knew that panicking would only make things worse. Days passed. She had no idea how long she had been walking. Her shoes were lost, so she had to wade through muddy water barefoot. Sometimes she saw small animals in the water, maybe snakes or fish, but she ignored them and kept going. Once, she found a dead passenger still strapped in a seat and realized how close she had come to dying. The sight was frightening, but she kept moving. On the fourth day, Juliane saw a small boat in the distance, but when she reached the spot, it was gone. She thought she was imagining things. By the seventh day, she was exhausted. Her arms and legs were covered with bites, and her wounds were infected. She could feel maggots in one cut on her arm. It was extremely painful, but she remembered that gasoline could remove maggots from wounds, something her father had once shown her. That memory would later help her survive. On the ninth day, Juliane finally saw something that gave her hope. A small hut near the river. She couldn't believe her eyes. Inside the hut, there was a boat, some gasoline, and other supplies. She was too weak to go far, so she stayed near the hut. She used the gasoline she found to pour on her infected wounds, and the maggots came out. The pain was terrible, but she knew it was necessary. The next morning, Juliane heard voices. 3 men appeared, local woodcutters who used the hut while working in the area. At first, they were shocked to see a young girl in such terrible condition, thin, dirty, and covered in insect bites. Juliane could only speak a little Spanish, but she managed to explain that she had survived a plane crash. The men believed her. They gave her food and cleaned her wounds. The next day, they took her by boat along the river to a small village. From there, she was flown to a hospital in Pucallpa. After 11 days alone in the jungle, Juliane was finally safe. She was treated for her injuries and reunited with her father. He had been searching desperately for news of his wife and daughter. Sadly, he had to tell Juliane that her mother did not survive the crash. Later, rescuers found the wreckage of the plane and confirmed that Juliane was the only survivor out of 92 passengers and crew. News of Juliane's survival spread quickly around the world. People were amazed that a young girl had fallen from the sky and lived, then survived for almost 2 weeks in one of the most dangerous jungles on Earth. Journalists called her the girl who fell from the sky. Scientists said her survival was a mix of luck, knowledge, and determination. Her seat might have slowed her fall. The trees cushioned her landing, and her calm thinking kept her alive afterward. Juliane spent several months recovering from her injuries. She returned to Germany with her father and continued her studies. Although the experience was painful and she lost her mother, she decided not to let it destroy her life. Instead, she chose to follow her parents' path and study biology. She eventually earned a PhD and became a respected zoologist. Later, she returned to Peru to help run the Panguana research station that her parents had founded. Years later, Juliane worked with filmmaker Werner Herzog, who, by coincidence, had been scheduled to take the same flight in 1971 but changed his plans at the last minute. Together, they made a documentary called Wings of Hope, where Juliane revisited the crash site and shared her story. In 2011, she wrote her memoir, When I Fell from the Sky, where she described the event in her own words, not as a story of fame, but as one of survival, love, and loss. Juliane often said that surviving the crash was both a gift and a burden. She felt deep sadness for the other passengers, especially her mother, but she also felt thankful for the chance to live. Her time in the jungle changed how she saw nature and life. She said that she never hated the forest. It had tested her, but it had also protected her. She learned that nature can be both cruel and kind. Juliane's story has inspired people around the world for decades. It reminds us of the power of human courage and will. Even in the darkest, most hopeless moments, a person can find the strength to go on. Juliane did not survive because of luck alone. She survived because she was calm, resourceful, and refused to give up. Today, Juliane Koepcke is still remembered as one of the greatest survival stories in history. Her life teaches important lessons: respect nature, stay calm in danger, and never lose hope. Her survival at 17 years old is proof that even when everything seems impossible, the human spirit can rise above fear and pain. Juliane's story is not just about falling from the sky. It's about rising from disaster, about how courage, knowledge, and determination can turn tragedy into survival. The jungle that could have killed her instead gave her life. And so, the world will always remember Juliane Koepcke, the girl who fell from the sky and survived.